negative thoughts in the air. There's not a kind of negative thought that's okay. Now you think that negative thoughts are okay if they're against your bad performance. They aren't. You just have to simply shift into a gear of refusing the bad performance. But if you sit and browbeat yourself mentally on your poor performance or your lack of keenness, you're polluting negative thoughts in the air. If you're, and it will even go to those humans out there and cause destruction to their forward motion. You're even setting up a pattern that they could pick up on. Now, I want to back up a second on the separation from your vehicles. Not long ago we made a tape where we talked a little bit about what it is that when your class is over and you get to leave and you hand your papers in, your test papers, and you'll get different grades depending upon the effort exerted according to the capacity that you had to exert. And you don't know that, and only those who sent you will know how to grade those papers correctly. Now, we talked also about that when you go back, and listen to this carefully because the first statement's not going to sound right until we listen to the next thing I'm going to say. When you go back, we've said that what you didn't accomplish, you will still have to correct. But that you don't translate that to the particular manifestation of where your vehicle was weak. In other words, when you get out of this vehicle, you're not going to have this vehicle and its weaknesses to deal with. But what you are going to have to deal with is that you didn't make the points you wanted to make in strength or will that would find themselves in the category of what was manifest in your vehicle according to its weaknesses. Now, can you follow that? In other words, you could say, well, I've had trouble with dealing with anger or something. I'll just make something up. Doesn't mean that you're going to have to overcome anger. It means that if you didn't get a good hold on overcoming a weakness in your vehicle and you had the capacity for a better hold on it than you exerted, then you're getting a poor grade in effort. Your will is not going to be as strong as it could have been had you exerted more. So that degree of willpower that you could have developed more during that period, you will have to develop someplace else, some other time, some other task, because you will not have developed it in the opportunity that you had. You see what we're saying? And it might even be that there are other tasks that would zero in on what would be a comparable area, but it wouldn't translate the same as you translate it to your vehicle. It wouldn't translate hostility or sensuality, because those are areas that are translated when you're entering a primitive vehicle that is having to deal with its history, and that history is not you. The history of that vehicle that you're inside is not your history, right? But what is your history? What is part of your this isn't accurate, I'm just using it as a quote, but it's a part of your mind or your genetic background. We're not talking about genes, we're talking about mind. But what's a part of your history is effort applied to weakness. Now, that's as close as you can talk about it in human terms. Because if you could put it in a nutshell, the reason you're here for this task is to get strong. And the rougher you might have had it, the better opportunity you had to get strong. And so don't ever be sorry for the roughness. Because when you, in the end, you're the person who had the better opportunity if it was really rough. You see what we're saying? Now, the contribution you make during the task is something that you all had an equal opportunity to do, because the contribution is what are the eggs you laid while you were here, of thoughts for the future generations. And that's why we resent it. Maybe resentment isn't the word, but that's why we, or maybe it is the word, that your teachers would resent times when your classmates would cop out of their task, their responsibility. Because then the eggs that should have been planted couldn't have been planted by the mass potential. Let's say if 100 students were sent, and those 100 students had, going maximum force forward, had a potential of accelerating the civilization toward its end, or toward part of it coming to its end, in a very short period of time. And you reduce that to half, that not only makes you have to work twice as hard, but you can't even work twice as hard as they could have had you all 100 been working full steam. I mean, you simply can't do it. You see what we're saying? And you also might have been able to do whatever it was that you were to do in degrees of laying eggs. You might have been able to do it in half the time. And so there was, in a sense, a justification for resentment, because we were all a part of a team to accomplish a task. And when people cop out, we know that only they are the losers, plus they're dumping their load on us. And it's not that we mind, but you can carry only X amount of exerted strength. There is your maximum capacity for load that you can carry in a task. You all follow that? You understand it? Now, I hope you understand a little bit. Don't know how much I skipped. Is it making sense? If you would concentrate more on separating, so that when you see yourself, or when you see what comes out as your effort exerted, you're seeing it as how well you're using your clumsy tool. And you get a determination to be a better manipulator of a primitive tool. Now, if you could see that in absolutely everything you do, and that make the tool inanimate. The tool can do nothing on its own. That's your vehicle. You are the thing that has to take the tool and make it do even the simplest thing. Now, it will try to even be alive and do, but what you have in mind for it to do, it can't do one thing that you would have it do. It can do a lot of things, but nothing you would have it do. It can only do things that are beneath you. You follow that? Although you look puzzled. Well, it's just that your vehicle can do an awful lot of, many of you still frequently go into automatic on the vehicle. Because you think the vehicle knows how to do this or that. Because you've taught it how to do it. And anytime you go into automatic, it's less than what your next level mind would do. It's a poor performance. It's like you're trying to keep, it's like a babysitter trying to keep one eye on the baby and read a book. And anytime you go into automatic, you don't know what that baby's doing when you're reading that book. You may not hear something, but you don't know what it's doing, because that baby's a living force moving. And anytime you go into automatic by letting your vehicle do something you think the vehicle knows how to do, it can't even reach 50% to the standard of what it would do if you were taking the tool and doing it by force, not letting the tool itself have any animation. The end result of what this vehicle is going to become, when these vehicles are going to become when they're ready to be beginners in the kingdom of heaven, the end result is a very, very refined piece of machinery and a very, very refined computer. And it will be an animate object, but will be under total control of the mind that has grown to the point of having control of it. Not just under the control of its history, or manipulated by its history, under whatever was handed down to it. You know, you can even translate that when you, all of you, even in your conscious minds, thought, I don't want to do as my parents and grandparents and great-grandparents did. I don't want to do as my sister did, my brother did. They all went over there and lived in the Bronx. And they've lived there for generations. But nobody will even get out of the Bronx. They don't even care to know that Brooklyn is over there. Do you see what I'm saying? And you said, I can't do that. You separate it. Now, when you let your vehicle do anything on automatic, it's the same thing as someone who doesn't want to reach out and see the world objectively and then take control of their lives. In other words, the unconscious thing that happens to a vehicle that wants to reach out and see everything is because they feel like unconsciously, once they see everything, they can take hold and do what they want to with what they have seen. Can you follow that? And that's probably why most of you just had this unquenchable thirst for going and seeing and doing, because you couldn't stand being in some little closed shell someplace doing the same thing and taking over Daddy's business and, you know, living in the family house and dying there. You know, hurry up and pay the burial plot. And because there was something about your mind that wanted to get above it. Now, if you could see this little vehicle that you have as something that you could be so separate from, that you could recognize any time it has a feeling or a response or wants to act, wants to sense anything or feel something, even wants to feel something against itself, it's really just wanting to feel something. And you don't want to feel anything. That does not mean the next level mind is cold. That's primitive talk. Because, do you know what we mean by that? It's not the next level mind is warm the way humans would talk about warm, you know, needing to hug everybody. Because that would be animal to the next level, to stoop to such conduct as that. And therefore, you don't even you've got to realize that any thought like that would come in would be a vehicular thought to even think that way. But to us, if you would concentrate on separation, I mean really concentrate on separation in your meditation, everything, and concentrate on, in whatever time you have left here, to try to shoot for better marks in effort. Because that's what you're going to be graded on. And that's what is going to determine your next task when you get back to the next level. where you're going to go, what you're going to do, what you can do, what you can't do, is going to be determined on effort. And when T said a moment ago that we're so eager for you to have a desperation to be awake more, bring more of that next level consciousness that was yours before you entered this vehicle. T called it a remembering, so that you will, because it's not like you remember which button on the spacecraft was eject. That kind of remembering, you can't remember as long as you're in this vehicle. Might have to eat those first. I wouldn't care. It'd be fun if I had to eat those first. But what you're trying to have a good memory on, though, is how to look at a task of having to manipulate a primitive vehicle. How to look at anything that is a problem with the task that you have, so that you can move faster. There's nothing as important as moving faster. That's why this cold weather excites us. That's the way T started a moment ago. Because we feel like it's change. It's definitely change. We want things in you to be change. We want patterns and records to be set daily that beat any records prior to that inside of you, in your own control.
I want to add just one thing, and that when you said that you're graded on the effort that you exerted, or effort also is strength that you have gained.
Strength might even be a better word than effort, because effort is just what it was that you applied in order to gain strength. You're graded more on the strength gained, because you really know what you're doing. Is I think you even know that you're being tested on how strong you are.
Well, you all will have a certain amount of strength, but the thing that you are dealing with in these vehicles, if you don't conquer it, then you will be weak in that area. And I believe this is what Stowe was trying to...
It doesn't mean weak in the area the vehicle was weak in. It means weak in a comparable category of what the vehicle manifests its weakness in.
When you first brought up genetics, it opened up the door to being able to view the vehicle more objectively. And today it's like another door. It's like it doesn't matter what weaknesses I have; they don't matter.
They really don't.
It's a completely different perspective. It's like it's totally unimportant what the individual things I'm dealing with, because they're simply opportunities. That's my little test. It could be anything.
Each of you have your own little textbook, so to speak.
It's just like if I have 50 straws here, and they're all a means of your getting strength. And I say, now, there might be 10 of the same color here. There might be 5 of the same color. Might be 12 of the same color. And you draw 6 of them. And then you're going to live with them. It doesn't really matter what they are. It's just they are the ones you have as a chance. And without them, you'd be wasting the time.
It takes the personal. It helps take the personal out of it, because that's what the vehicle likes.
Oh, it likes to relate to its suffering. The vehicle's so primitive, it still gets a great deal of pleasure out of even being down on itself. Great deal of pleasure out of being down on itself. It has refused to compute it as pleasure. It refuses to compute it as pleasure. And therefore, you ought to have sense enough to know that when it denies it, that it doesn't have any better sense than to recognize that it still has pleasure out of it. It's getting a charge out of that feeling of hurt. Even though if you ask the vehicle, If it liked pain, it liked suffering, it liked hurt, oh, for heaven's sake, I'm not into that. No, I don't. I want to be happy. But even the kind of happiness that it wants is something that is out of place for you. You can't even let it be happy in that way. Even if you are out playing volleyball, you have to be extremely restrained with that vehicle. Particularly anything when the vehicle is physically active and it could let go and act like a vehicle would like to act. You have to be very, very restrained and be sure. It doesn't mean you have to be unpleasant. It means that you don't let it get its type of pleasure, a human type of pleasure from that. It gets, you want to have a pleasure at a different level. It's not even pleasure. It's more like a test of, can I do this task of playing volleyball? And do it, and because Blinks has given you a task of playing volleyball from time to time, haven't they? If we had, you wouldn't have it out there. And it's, can I do it and do it in the right way? Can I do it with control and restraint? Can I enjoy the game? Can others enjoy the game without any of my vibration or the way I hit the ball or anything else being like my vehicle would do it if it wasn't under control? Well, we just got through. We timed it.
Very good.
We did want to let you all ask some questions. Jody?
I have difficulty at times trying to tell what my mind is trying to tell me to do and what the vehicle is trying to come in and tell me to do. To differentiate between what the right action is. How can I?
Usually the best thing you can do is ask yourself, take a circumstance that where you have where that question comes up, and say to yourself, would this be a question that a mind of the next level would ask? Would it serve a mind of the next level to ask this question? What would be the motivation for this question? Or is this a question that a human vehicle would ask or be concerned with?
Can you give us an example of something?
Well, an example is like playing volleyball. A thought will come in, how should I play this? And often it's a positive thought, how would Lynx have me play volleyball? And then I'll get some kind of information, and more thoughts will come in, and it's like, it turns into a negative because the thoughts keep saying, well, that really isn't right. You should do it this way. And then more thoughts come in, so it gets to the point where the game is going and it's interfering with the game.
In my mind, you don't know the procedure for playing volleyball because you don't have thoughts come in. In other words, we've given some procedures for it.
Which are the only things you have to go by.
Right. And the rest of the thing is just following those procedures. Now, do you know what the procedures are?
On how to play? Tell us some of it.
You would try to do it restrained as a member of the next level. You wouldn't try to spike the ball downward. You would try to keep the ball up on your side and hope to put it over the net and hope your opponent would get it back. And at the same time, you would try to do the best you could. And you wouldn't think about your opponent losing. However, you wouldn't want to lose yourself just because you want to do the best you can do.
Right.
You would.
You've covered most of it.
In other
It's
words,
just like, and not be aggressive, not be clumsy, knocking each other down, that kind of thing. I can't think of what else. See anything else that would come into your mind. It would have to be of the vehicle, because you don't want to start getting complicated. You don't want to start adding little sideways to play or hit the ball or anything. All you're trying to do is see how long can this ball keep going back and forth without my knocking somebody down and without my so that I can be keen enough and keep the ball in the air. And you see what we're saying? The things you mentioned.
So my vehicle is trying to get too complicated in order to get some feeling out of the anxiety of not being
Trying probably to analyze it a little bit.
Probably trying to analyze it too much or to embellish it, to add some little, to decorate it.
It's so simple. Just about everything you do, you have procedures for, right? And if you follow those procedures, that's all you need to think about. And before long, more thoughts will be given to you, more procedures. But because the next level has designed it to be this way, this prevents your vehicle, when you follow procedures, this prevents your vehicle from chiming in, so to speak. If you just keep the procedures in your mind. It's so simple once you all realize that the procedures are the only thing that matters. Then whenever you have a thought that's negative, if you start thinking about a procedure, then the negative thoughts will go away.
And there shouldn't be anything that's of any significance that there is not a procedure for.
And you might think, you mean that's all we're going to think about are procedures? Well, that's all
That's
you need
right.
to
That's
think
all
about.
there is.
What else
Listen,
is
all
there,
the
you know?
humans have been thinking. All that's in your genes are the procedures of a primitive society. That's all that's in your genes are the procedures of a primitive society. And you're fighting procedures with procedures against procedures. But you're putting next level procedures against them, a very primitive group of procedures. And that's the argument that goes on inside of you, is your next level procedure.
The funny part is that every time you quote procedures to yourself, you're bringing the procedures that you've learned in your mind to the surface more. And in other words, it's like the procedures are hitting you this way from the outside in, because like links are standing over you with procedures always. And then your mind is coming in with procedures also. So the only thing that's left to conquer, you have two working against one. You follow that? So the odds are pretty good that you can overcome the vehicle if you want to look at it in that way. And in other words, you have enough strength to conquer the vehicle if you practice quoting procedures to it all the time. Can you understand that? Because we have not us, but I mean the next level has given you procedures. There are procedures yet to come, because as you need a procedure will be given to you. A procedure is a way of thinking. We're trying to awaken you, to bring out in you your mind, so that one day we'll walk in and your mind will say to us, I know why you're here, T&O, because it's time for us to leave, because my mind knows it.
That's true.
You see what we're saying? So, and it's in our computer, it's in our mind, it ought to be in your mind also. So why should we be favored over you? I mean, we're all the same in the next level, right? So why should we
Some
have
are
the
older
knowledge?
than the others, but it's just all it amounts to.
They don't whisper in our ear and say, now don't you tell him. Let's let it be. Now, we like to play secrets because, you know, it's surprises, not play secrets, but surprises, you know. And like we say, we'll bring you some dessert. Instead of our saying, we'll bring you some cake or something like that. We think in our own little simple way, you know, we'll surprise them with a piece of cake, you know. But in a sense, it's kind of a joke, you know, next level way of a little bit of fun, you know. it's a simple kind of fun, but the next level is fair in its what knowledge. In other words, you all receive the same knowledge we receive. Our ability to interpret the knowledge is, and I don't mean you receive messages. I'm not saying that, but it's in the ether. It's given to the humans in the ether, right? And so do you think it's put in brackets so it won't reach you all? But the level of your interpretation is less than what Tiando's level of interpretation is.
You know,
follow that? So that when we talk to you, you know what we're talking about. All we're doing is bringing it to the surface. You follow that? But you don't have the ability, and I'm not trying to put you down, but that's the way it's designed, that you can't come up with ideas ahead of us. You might remember it as we tell you, but you don't want to try and get ahead of your teachers by saying, writing us and saying, my mom told me that next week we're going to be talking about such and such and such, you know. If so, keep it quiet, and then when Link talks to you about it, you can say, oh, at least my mind was right in this way. Because invariably, if you got it before we did, and the next level didn't want you to get it before us, then they won't ever give it to us in order for us to bring it to your attention. You can never outguess the next level. Remember we told you that we tried to outguess it, and even if we've guessed it, I'm sure they changed the plan. So they would know that we were never more important than they are. You see what I'm saying? Because it just doesn't work that way.
So don't trust what you're getting.
Right.
You can think about it, but when we actually give it to you, then you'll see what it was that something caused you to be aware of when it was coming in, even though you might have seen a little different shade. You know, and like T said, the humans are all in tune with those things, but their interpretation gets further and further and further from your capacity to interpret what is coming in at that time. It's funny that the things that they are so in tune with, they can get almost the exact same interpretation. For example, the way people talk about computers. Ever since computers have been really active and people have been using them, we've been calling your brain your computer, and humans are calling their brains their computers. When we were coming down this morning, we turned on the radio in the car, and this fellow who was answering questions from call-in about gardening, he was asked a couple of questions. He said, I can't get my computer to work this morning. I think it's shut down. He said, I don't know why I can't remember that. And I just kept making reference to his memory as his computer.
And yet he was a very simple person.
That's right. But we're saying they can tune into that level of lingo, which is even parallel with the same way you're talking about your computers in that way, applying those terms.
You ready?
I'm funny that so many times throughout this class we've always wondered when we're going to leave, you know, and how are we going to find out? And kind of like that maybe it makes other jokes to say, well, you know the answer all the time. It's just a matter of when you're going to remember it.
And that's true. That's
Yes,
true.
on that.
Generally?
Volleyball, when you're talking about how you have to go out and be aggressive, you are just really close. You might go out together and not hit the ball and hit the ground and let somebody else do it.
Well, the vehicle may be just the opposite. It may be just the opposite. We're not saying that all vehicles are aggressive. You know, some vehicles are as far as human interpretation, are very extrovertish and very aggressive. Others are very standoffish and timid and all. But that you've got to get beyond that as well. You've got to bring next level handling of a task in to that vehicle just as much as you have to restrain the other one to the same degree. I mean, you have to end up at the same place. Doesn't matter what it is you have to start with your tool. We didn't mean to imply that they're necessarily all aggressive in that way, but they all are aggressive in some ways. There are a lot of aggressive characteristics in these primitive vehicles that you have. Even if they're aggressive toward you in their own silence, they're very aggressive toward you. You can't deny that. You know what Well, first of all, don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it. You're anytime, or not anytime, but frequently, your brain will record your fears in a way, and it will translate it according to what the brain is familiar with, and maybe even relate that to the background of the vehicle. So, probably like a lot of you have dreams where you are just about to perform and you can't remember the words, or you can't, whatever it is, you get out there and you flunk again and again, and it's only because you're trying to impress the vehicle with good performance and not wanting to do those things. So in the sense, the vehicle gets scared, and wants you to worry about it not letting you do a good performance. Because it's just like a primitive puppy. But when you're reading your dreams, it's not your next level mind. Or when you're remembering a dream, you're merely getting the way the vehicle interpreted its response to what's been fed it, and relates it to what it's had to deal with.
And sometimes there's another meaning to your dream. In other words, it may interpret it as being something negative, but it can be a positive.
Oh, yes.
You've got to remember that in the translation, sometimes it isn't the way it appears to be.
Right,
you have to look at another meaning to it.
And sometimes the dream is the way the vehicle is responding to something that's coming in while the vehicle's asleep, or something that's coming down. Let's put it that way. You follow what we're saying? And but you don't know what to do with it, and it's kind of foolish to try to make anything out of it, because it's not going to be a significant test passed until that circumstance appears. But sometimes it almost makes you feel like, or the dream makes you feel like, you knew that was coming, and you saw it happen later that day. And but it was because that was what was coming in, and since it's what was coming in, then the experiences you had that day had to manifest that thing that came in. You see, that's what humans call prophetic dreams and things like that, because it's just the fact that it's responding to something that's coming in. It's just like a receiver picking up radio signals, but it doesn't know how to interpret them. And those things go on in the brain and it comes into your conscious mind if you happen to wake up in the middle of it, or just as it has ended and it's receiving it, and you can't make out how that funny little animal translated that experience.
It's like if you dreamed that you were murdered, or you murdered somebody while you were in a dream. I wouldn't even accept that, and you might awaken with a very funny feeling, like I had a horrible nightmare. And what you need to do is just tell your vehicle that isn't what happened. There's no way you could have murdered anyone, and just don't feel that way. Just forget it, and it'll go away because. And what you want to do is even say, I wonder what it is that I'm supposed to learn from this dream.
That may have murdered all of the bad things.
Right. Murdered some bad characteristic that you had, or you were being chased by somebody. That's a common dream, I believe, and that could be even something good. In these shows where these space shows where they show spacecraft coming in and then these monsters coming off of the ship, and the vehicle has been programmed to believe that anything from outer space is bad. And so the vehicle it believes that anything that you're being chased, if you're being chased, it's bad. It might be somebody's chasing you to catch you to put you on the spacecraft or something, And but your vehicle might interpret it as being something bad. So what you want to do is always translate everything negative into a positive. That's all you need to do. And the vehicle will respond very well to it once it gets in the habit of your doing it. And this goes back to what Joe was talking. This is where we came in, so to speak. You turn every negative into a positive, but don't make the positive a negative by talking negatively to your vehicle. See how you can. Remember, years ago they used to say, never say no to a child, because they grow up with no ingrained in their vehicle or in their minds, and it isn't good for them. And so they grew up being a bunch of spoiled kids. Were you all one of those, Your vehicle? But the thing of it is...
I don't know how to say that. Yes. What we're trying to say to you now, don't say anything negative to your vehicle. See how you can get control of your vehicle by making it a positive every time. That way we will keep the negative things from the ether. Put only the positive and make use of this time as quickly as we can. Doe talked about how we lost so many individuals that were assigned to this task. And you all can only do so much. We can only do so much. However, we feel like all of us are working as hard as we possibly can. We try our best to give more than 100% of ourselves in order to make this task move more quickly. And we hope that you all are giving 100% of yourself. That's the only way we can make it move quickly, is to all of us work together as a team and to do everything that we can to the best of our ability. Even if you falter, don't stay on your knees very long. Get up and make amends as quickly as you can. By that I mean, if you lose your temper, don't let a moment pass by. As soon as you realize you lost your temper, turn around to that person and say, "Good night, I'm sorry I did that. But I'm going to stop that. I'm not going to allow it to happen again. I'm going to try not to let it happen again." And this applies to everything. If you have a bad tape that bothers you, just the other day, tape, it started going in my mind, or in my brain, and they ran a couple of times, and I thought, what in the world is happening in my brain? And so I stopped it and started thinking about something, next level procedures or something about the next level thing. And as soon as I finished thinking about that, completed that thought, then in came another tape.
It must be the time of the year for tapes, you know.
Not
And,
my turn now. You
Yeah, you thought about the next level. Well, now let me talk about this one. And so it, but the thing of it is, they never affected me. At least I don't think they did. I became aware that they were there as soon as I could, which was just a couple of words, you know, and then I turned them off. And this is how you want to be. You want to be so stubborn. And if you find that you're having trouble with tape, then get busy doing something that is the next level way of doing it. And that will stop those tapes. Even if as soon as you stop doing the next level thing and the tapes start again, then do something else that's next level. But let it become the pattern, the way that you do things. And before you know it, it will be a breeze to handle these things. We doubt very seriously, and we're not trying to put a negative thought in the air, but we're being logical. We doubt very seriously if you will ever stop feeling the things. But we know thoughts in that way. All you do is say, oh, I've seen this show, so I'm going to turn it over to something else.
That's right.
Yeah, I've heard that tape long enough. You know, I've heard that before.
That old thing, this one, that old movie again?
Don't need to see it again. No, move on. But this, you want to make up your mind, and I guess this is what I'm trying to get, is a commitment out of you right now, that you will be so determined that you will stop anything that is negative and start the positive going. And in other words, have the positive stronger than the negative. Keep the negative out of the ether. Keep your vehicle as much under control as you possibly can.
You know, one of the things that helps me get my mind on to other things, if when this is happening, is to think about all the related ramifications of the genetic structure and of how the next level, how this garden has been built to grow. I don't know if you understand that, but for example, we've talked about it maybe before, but when you read in the Bible someplace that vanity is the best thing that man ever did, why is vanity good? In a sense, why is vanity good? No, because you're trying to better yourself. Yes, you're trying, whether it's just vanity to be prettier or to be more youthful, and in a sense, that's good. Even though it's a very, it's a shame that that's the best way, or that that's the best thing that human vehicle could do would be vain. You see what we're saying? And have you thought about why their fearing death is positive? Why it's right for them to fear death, and that there's something wrong with the programming of accepting it. Because what they're to strive to do is ultimately to become healthier, to get on higher and higher vibrations that are less destructive, to improve all their thinking, all their consuming, all their ways, so that they are more and more and more indestructible. So it's proper that they fear death, because by fearing death, they want to live longer. And in a sense, it's proper that they want to be young, and that they don't want to get old, and actually shouldn't give in to getting old. Do you see what we're saying? It would be poor programming, because if others see them making a healthy adjustment to getting old, then it somehow or other mutes the motivation for forward motion. Now, the only way they can translate forward motion is activity. Stay young, stay active, stay alive. And in that And that way they're making a contribution toward the trunk or the branch moving forward, even though they're just little leaves of that branch along the way. But nothing is lost. When you see how beautiful it is that nothing is lost when a vehicle is lost, and that it's even right for them to have the things that they fear, these kind of things, because it motivates them to want to, for the scientists to want to learn more about longevity, and everybody to want to learn how to improve health and to make more out of life. Now, and you can, there's no end. This is just one little tiny topic. Now, if I lay in my bunk and I can't rest, I can't make my vehicle sleep, I can think of one topic right after another related to how the garden has grown, or this genetic understanding, or what it is that that we're talking about of bringing more of your next level mind into your consciousness. There's so much to think about. Why not think about those things instead of thinking about instead of battling with a tape that might want to play? Just turn the channel to a blank space and put in these thoughts that you're working on. Can you see that, Sanity? Yes, it's they will eventually, when it's close to an advanced state, they will think less that way. But you know, they're thinking less that way even now. But they're thinking of that way in spiritual terms. Like, how about these meditation groups, the spiritual groups that say, I want to have a universal consciousness. I want to get above self. I want to destroy ego. I want to become a part of God. These are things that is in their vocabulary. And in a sense, it's just a very primitive translation of how the garden's growing, or of the trunk of civilization as it moves forward that way. There's not a thing in the world, really, that humans can do to interfere with what the plan, the next level, has for its garden. Not a thing in the world. They can make it hard for them. They can make them have to work a little more here, a little more there, but they can't mess it up. I don't know if you can understand that, but they can't mess it up. And to that degree, the next level would interfere. Now, you could say, well, what if they blow everybody off the face of the earth? They can't. They can't. They can't even do it. And if those that survived, let's say that they tried to do it, and there were only a few hundred or a few thousand who survived the experience, they would grow several thousand years in 100. Because they would be determined to never let society come to that again. Can you see what we're saying? So there's no end to what examination you can have fun with by turning on channels of what you have now learned instead of listening to old black and white.
At first I thought it was just anxiety in response to the cold that made me feel very excited and hot. And I've noticed things that would happen even at my hours fast, immediately when I'm seeing a little differently. as if something were about to happen that was really good, and I didn't know what it was. And I've been finding that when I go down, I haven't been falling asleep in a long time because my brain, I don't know if it's good or not. I mean, it may not, maybe just a lack of control, but it seems the cold is activated.
That's
I feel
okay.
thirsty. You know,
That's good. We're certainly thirsty right now. And there might be. Don't know. Now, don't ever be concerned about loss of sleep, because you're not. Your object of having downtime is to get rest, and you sleep as much of that time as you can, and because you want to be strong for the next day, and to perform as well as you can. But usually, if your head is in the right place, and even if your vehicle sleeps very little, if your head is in the right place, you will perform well the next day, and you'll try to rest, even if you find that you've been so restless that you haven't even been able to rest well. That's something else that don't. If you get bothered about I didn't rest, it's only going to interfere with your performance. You see what we're saying? So don't get bothered by those things. But there is some, it's just like the amount of static electricity that's present when you've got a severe cold snap, and even when the humidity hasn't dropped any more than it has in some areas. But there's that same kind of electricity in your mind, and you want to say, well, what is it? I want to know what it is, because I want to take full advantage of it. And that's why we're here talking to you, because we're trying to share with you what we think is the appropriate step for right now for you to take advantage of. So,
What happens when changes occur in the world? Like, let's say something unusual like this weather. What happens to the human? They get worried, don't they? And when they worry, what do they do? Right. Okay. So this is why you got to get busy and put some things in the ether. Okay.
you know what? That's another way that the next level has let their primitive programming help them. Because if they look up, it doesn't matter how they translate that, but if they look for answers, then don't they become better receivers? It's when they're not looking for answers that they are lousy receivers. In other words, if the information is coming in and they're receiving it on their own level, then when are they better receivers than when they're in anxiety looking up? Yeah.
And they try to be better too.
That's right. They try to be better.
And we noticed, you know how we used to say people give us a finger as we were driving along, in the car. And I've noticed people are nicer now than what they used to be.
There's not as much of that as there was now. We're not saying that there's not a lot of very low life out there, because there is. But let's say that it's moving forward, and it's separating to a degree.
And Houston went about a week without a murder.
Listen, Houston's the murder capital of the nation.
Okay, that's good. They were killing them off right and left, But
now, we're not saying that all human plants are moving forward, but they are moving forward, but they're not all becoming better. Some of them are going at a more rapid pace to their own waste. But that's good. That's good. Because those who are moving in forward motion begin to pay less attention to those who are going in the other direction. They begin to separate more, instead of feel like they have to drag every one of those along with them.
And they're also becoming concerned about each other. The poor people and the ones who don't have a place to stay. In this cold weather, they've tried to find places for them to stay out of the weather so they wouldn't be cold.
We feel like the numbers that they're saying They say that we've got thousands more street people hungry than we ever had before. We don't think it's any different. The difference is that they become aware of it.
Right.
Yes, and
They
that they're
haven't
choosing
cared
to do
before.
something about it.
They haven't cared before, but now
Mhm.
they do. So it's, there are changes. So when you want to think about something, think about these things. And it's a lot better for you, don't you?
I felt really how experiences fusion on a whole different level. And I don't know if that word is about that, but I've got past and places before I kind of had to try and block out certain things, but now I can respond to them because I know I'm responding to on a whole different level.
There was one thing on that little paragraph that wasn't accurate. We didn't say that they're celebrating the birth of a member of the next level. If we did, that's not what we meant. Because it occurred certainly when that infant was born, it wasn't the birth of a member of the next level. So that paper shouldn't have read that way. It wasn't quite accurate. But they're celebrating the next level. And that's what excites us. And they get so busy about it. And they're so desperate. You know, it's like they've got a deadline, and it's midnight the 24th. You know, and it's like everything has to get accomplished by that time. And they drive twice as fast, they sing twice as hard, they want to do their best. They really do. They really do. And in their primitive way, they're actually celebrating the next level.
Well,
Because that's the only association they have with it.
Well, in a sense, it is a member of the next level.
No, I said it wasn't the birth.
The birth, right.
Yes,
It
it is,
a member of
yes.
the next level being here and so on. So that hasn't changed. Yes, it's easier to accept this kind of time of the year because the thoughts that are in the year is always drawing you to what you used to know when you were in this world, you know.
What the vehicle
What
means.
the vehicle means. And consequently, it's easier to translate that into a positive by saying, well, they wouldn't even be doing this if it wasn't for where we're
Right.
from.
So we like to see them celebrated in the right way. So, did you want to say something?
I had a question about pregnant,
Okay.
and when I got a pregnant back, and the instructions are not turning in anymore, I just finished one. So I said,
You didn't get instruction not to turn in anymore.
oh, then I just took it in a minute.
No, you didn't get an instruction not to turn in any more segments. What's Sunodi talking about? And Daddy?
I don't make the run, but I thought what the one of our others did instruction to me was that we would not turn in any new ones until we made the correction on the old one.
Until genetic general, it was top priority. Until it was finished and on its way, it would take top priority. And other segments you'd put aside until you had genetic general ready for printing.
We said something else about
Okay, well,
that if you had turned in a segment and it was in the process of being graded and all, you could go ahead and write on something else. But you, and if you completed it
yes.
before you could go, you wouldn't delay the general segment until you completed that other one, the second one that you were working on. In other words, that other one would have top priority.
Which,
Okay?
in other words, if you've got genetic general just waiting to be typed, is that what you're saying?
Or to be graded, read.
Or to be graded, then you work on those others. But when you have, if there's something still to be done to genetic general, it's number one priority. That's all that we were trying to get into motion.
But we even gave you some little things that you could work on, like those little,
Some other topics.
like reflections, that we told you about, if you wanted to do something like that. But we don't want you to stop thinking about segments.
No, and we
Okay.
broadened our whole perspective, remember? We said that now, after you finish general, that we can even think of saying the ultimate facts of what condition humans would reach at the time of being at the end of their humankind, and even what conduct that would require, and what kind of life they would have in that process. But we said that you would do it in a way that wouldn't be putting them down or preaching to them. It would be doing it as if to help motivate them for becoming more civilized. That there's a very strong element for those who choose to go in the right direction, that they all want to be more civilized. Those who are going in the right direction want to be more civilized. Do you understand that? That word means something that they want to be. And that's the reason it's important for you to think in the terminology that those who want to move in the right direction could relate to.
I'm kind of funny that I remember I think it's somewhere in the 60s, I remember hearing and reading about scientists had predicted what the human vehicle was going to look like after it had evolved over maybe another million years or so. And they described it probably wouldn't stand any canvas.
That's right.
The cranium would be larger.
Probably wouldn't have any teeth.
You know, and at the time I thought, because I don't want to look like that. But now when I look back on it, I realize that maybe what they were tuning into was more of a next level thing.
That's right.
Why wouldn't they have any teeth?
Because we wouldn't need to use them for chewing. This is what these articles used to say, that the teas, that the food, the nutrition would have been reduced to powders and tablets and liquids and things, and that their digestive systems would be different, and because they'd be much more refined.
The muscles probably wouldn't be as muscular, because they'd be moving on escalators and moving sidewalks and all kinds of stuff, so they wouldn't need as many muscles.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's probably a degree of truth to that. We're going to have to call it quits. You want to take a couple more? And then... Okay, Grandmother? On segments?
No,
No.
we said writing the letter you could.
No.
We didn't want you working longer than 30.
We haven't limited you that much on segments. We've limited you on reading magazines. We've limited you on reading novels. We've limited you on ping pong. And
I don't think I would sit and write the segment for hours at a time.
Right.
You know, that's not for. Oh, I know what she's talking about, because I think I said I've tried writing some things, and I don't write more than about 20 or 30 minutes at a time, and then I usually write pretty fast, and therefore I usually get as much said as possible, but that didn't mean that I felt like I could write down. I don't know if my interest span is short, or I write a lot in 20 minutes or 30 minutes.
Well, I think if you know, I know what she does is she thinks a lot about what she's going to write before she writes it.
Right.
And then she tries to say what she's going to say in as few words as she can. And so she feels like she can usually write what she has on her mind in about 20 or 30 minutes. And then it's going to require a lot more planning for the next application. Because you certainly don't want to sit down and pen and write as you think. You don't want to be that extemporaneous about it. It's not going to, it wouldn't have the brevity in it or the potency in it that if you had really thought it out before you start.
So, what was your question?
Right, well, you can... Right. Okay. I think you can get a lot more fine-tuning done even when you're doing other tasks, even when you're doing lab work or you're doing other things, because you don't have so much fine-tuning to do with pen in hand if you have done a lot of fine-tuning in your head before you sit down with the pen. You follow what we're saying? Because it's usually when you sit down and you're excessive that you realize you've got to go back and keep whittling it and toning it down and saying and trying to make it more potent. So you could do the kind of thinking that you could do. You can do when you're on a run or you're doing other things without even sacrificing your task. You can still be thinking about those and fine-tuning them.
So, Nettie, did you get your question asked? I know we interrupted you before you got it. Okay. Okay, good. Yes.
When you get the segment, and the segment is written, graded, pencil in, and it's back again for two people to check, and no, then corrected by the writer, and two people check it before it gets typed. The instruction, as I understand it, is you were to look for only obvious errors and misinformation.
That's in reverse order. You're looking for misinformation. And if in looking for misinformation you happen across the fact that you didn't complete that sentence or something that's that obvious, you just bring it to their attention.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not trying to really act as a composition teacher or editor. You see what we're saying?
Yes.
If it's something really obvious, then you'd be helpful to bring up to the person that you didn't finish that sentence, or I can't tell where that sentence stopped and this one started, or something of that nature. But your main thing that you're hunting for is that they're not saying something that is other than what they have been taught.
Okay, now, it's a tricky question, right? I don't understand in that place. But if somebody asks you to check this, and my brain, let's say, I'm not sure that how misinformation can be interpreted, right?
Okay, then I think I know your answer before you finish the question. And that's the same way that when people say, if when I look on the grade sheet of how they graded my paper, you're simply to take those suggestions and try to see if they apply and use your own judgment. As, in other words, I'm going to examine it. Let's say that you looked at my paper and you said this is misinformation, or I question whether or not this is misinformation.
Mm-hmm.
And you're looking at my paper, and I take that paper back, and then it's up from there. It's up to me. It's not up to you to agree again with me.
Mm-hmm.
It was merely your task to point out to me that there's a possibility that that might be misinformation. Then it's up to me to try to figure out if it needs to be corrected or not, or changed. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's as far as we can go. We're not going to debate the misinformation. You see what we're saying? Any more than someone might have put on grading your segment, somebody might have put too brief. Somebody else might have said more examples. Somebody else might have said so. But you're not going to try to go back and satisfy each one of those when you're redoing your segment. You're going back and taking them and seeing where you can apply those things in a way that seems right for your paper. But then you're not going to go back to that person who said more examples and say, is this not enough examples? Or is this enough brevity? Did that get to your question?
I'm not asking it right. Let's say you're giving me your paper, and
you're checking it for misinformation.
One word. Let's just take spirituality. Let's say that you write your paper in a tone that's very spiritual. It seems that way.
Well, that's not misinformation.
That's my question.
That's not
If I
misinformation.
interpret it that way, then that's not misinformation. That's just a viewpoint.
That's right. That's something that should have been corrected back at stage one
Okay.
of grading when you said you're expressing yourself in spirituality. Now, if they haven't corrected that after it was brought up to them in that way, then they just chose not to correct it in that way. But hopefully you're all trying to correct your lingo and the way you phrase things so they don't sound spiritual or syrupy or philosophical. They just sound like a historian who knows a little bit more than somebody who doesn't know much about history. Because that's really all you are. In essence, you're getting information from historians who wrote the history books, even though you're a history student and you're a very elementary history student. Now, I'm talking about a human, okay? So, but if you're looking for misinformation, then you don't want, it's not, you're still writing this in a spiritual way. That wouldn't be appropriate. But if I come across something that say, I don't believe that we've ever been taught this. This sounds like some idea that maybe you came up with.
Okay.
Then that's misinformation.
Okay.
That's misinformation. I don't remember. We may have been taught this, but if we were, I didn't know it. That's all you need to say.
Okay.
And then that person takes it, examines it, and if they're in doubt, they change it or leave it out because they don't want to take a chance on misinformation.
Okay, I guess it's time for them to
Okay.